Today I open with a prayer from the Chinook people of the Pacific Northwest. May all I say and all I think be in harmony with thee, God within me, God beyond me, maker of the trees. Amen. For thousands of years, the space where we prayerfully gather today was under the care of the native people of the Cree Nation, who originally lived, loved, were born, and who died where our church now stands. Tribes like the Chippewa and the Menominee, their presence in this region is remembered and woven into the history of our community. On this Native American Ministries Sunday and every day, we are encouraged to partner in repairing past harm and to move forward with awareness and respect, celebrating and embracing the contributions of First Americans. As we consider the history of Methodism in relation to the Native American communities, it's not good. We must recognize complicity in genocide and in trauma. Sadly, the Sand Creek Massacre was led by a Methodist minister in 1864. According to Jeff Campbell, a criminal investigator specializing in cold cases in New Mexico, and this is probably one of the coldest cases he's ever done, the attack began in pre-dawn light, but sound carries in this environment, so the victims would have heard the hooves pounding towards them before they could see what was coming. Their chiefs had recently sought peace talks with the white officials and believed they would be unmolested in their isolated camp. When hundreds of blue-clad cavalrymen, led by Methodist minister Colonel John Shivington, suddenly appeared at dawn on November 29th, a Cheyenne chief raised the stars and stripes above his lodge. Others in the village waved white flags. The troops replied by opening fire with carbines and cannon, killing the lowest count that was available was 150 Native people, most of them women, children, and the elderly. Before departing, the troops burned the village and mutilated the dead, carrying off body parts as trophies. Now, if you want any more information on that battle, you're going to have to look it up, because I researched this through multiple sites, and so I know how things went down, and I couldn't sleep last night. The chief who had raised the flag relocated the remainder of his band onto reservation land in Oklahoma, where only 1 year later he was killed in yet another massacre, this one led by George Armstrong Custer. There were many such atrocities in the American West, but the slaughter at Sand Creek stands out because of the impact it had at the time and the way it has been remembered, or rather lost and then rediscovered. Honor has only partially been restored in recent years. Our own Wisconsin Conference has, for a number of years, had a group led by our indomitable bishop working with leaders from our Wisconsin tribes, making some inroads on healing some of the wounds of the past. And while the history appears, well, much of it has been horrific, many good things have risen from the ashes. Today's passage from 1 John applies quite well here. Everyone who has this hope in him purifies himself, just as he is pure. You know that Yeshua appeared in order to take away sins, and in him there is no sin. No one who abides in him keeps on sinning. No one who sins has seen him or known him. Children, let no one mislead you. The one who practices righteousness is righteous, just as Yeshua is righteous. Now, for thousands of years, traditional stories, including most told throughout the Bible, held the world's history. Today, they form the core that holds many communities together. Slowly and cautiously, a new concept, a new way of understanding history and the world developed in the early decades of the 17th century in Europe and later in the United States. Europeans began to understand that the world was much older than they realized, and the human history stretched back over millennia. This realization set off a search for our early ancestors, both in Europe and in America. In America, most of the earliest archaeological activity focused upon the identification and documentation of the amazing earthworks that occupied large sections of the country's midsection. That's us. By 1860, the quest for the first Americans began to share spotlight with burial and effigy mounds research. Both endeavors involved avocational archaeologists, professional archaeologists, geologists, and anthropologists. Between 1860 and the consensus confirming discovery at Folsom, New Mexico in 1927, these individuals came to realize that the early history of the Americas was different from that of Europe. Surprise. They established a set of criteria for evaluating the validity of archaeological reports concerning the first Americas. And, at least in their own minds, they established that American Indians had been in the Americas for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. In addition to the artifacts they recovered, these early archaeologists incorporated information from geology and paleontology, soil science, human biology, and the behaviors and histories of living American Indians. This practice of consulting diverse sources to develop as complete a picture of the past as possible continues today. The work of these pioneers did not answer all of the questions concerning the first Americans, but it did set the stage for a new round of questions. In Wisconsin, the first American sites came to broad public attention in 1897 when members of the Dosch family saw the bones of a large animal in an eroded stream bag. Digging unearthed a nearly complete mastodon skeleton. 2 spear points were also recovered with the bones at this site near Boas, Wisconsin. This spectacular find was widely publicized, prompting others to look for similar sites. More Paleo-Indian points were discovered and their locations identified. Many of these artifacts were donated to the Wisconsin Historical Society and other museums. The recovery, reporting, and analysis of these points revealed that Wisconsin's first residents had lived in all corners of the states. The collection became the core of an ever-expanding base of information on the first residents of Wisconsin, and they reanalyzed as new questions came to the foreground. Wisconsin has become an important place in the search for answers to questions about the first Americans. Weaving together information from museum collections and private sources, and following up these inquiries with extensive fieldwork, archaeologists have located 5 sites in southeastern Wisconsin alone where bones from mammoths appear to exhibit evidence of butchering. Stone tools were recovered at 2 of these locations. These sites in the early dates associated with them 12,500 to 12,000 years ago. That's a long time. Sent shockwaves through the archaeological community and made front page news. These research efforts continue, and people are waiting to see what exciting new information comes to light. Today's archaeologists and researchers, while continuing to dig ever deeper, sorry, there's no pun intended there, are working side by side with indigenous tribal members and religious leaders to ensure that the sanctity of any grave sites, any human remains, as well as the customs and beliefs of the native people are honored. After all, we are reminded in our call to worship today that we are all a part of the circle of life, also known as the medicine wheel or the sacred hoop. And in that vein, our offering today will include an offering for Native American Ministries Sunday. So if you care to contribute to that, anything sent in to us that is marked Native American Ministries Sunday will be forwarded directly to our conference to be distributed throughout the ministries. But the Native American medicine wheel, or the sacred hoop, as such, all must show honor to and can then expect honor in return, as they are all part of the circle of life. So join with me as we step into the circle today. Amen.